Hi, and welcome to the Big Time Talker Podcast. I'm Burke Allen. We're live in San Diego at the San Diego Convention Center in the glass-enclosed nerve center, the podcast pavilion of the American Library Association's big annual conference and exhibition. Thousands of authors and publishers and subject matter experts, anyone and everyone who's in the book business is here, along with thousands of readers who want to queue up and meet award-winning authors. They can't meet Elizabeth Hendrick, though, because I've got her all to myself in the next few minutes. She's the award-winning author of EXODAI. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Bert. It's wonderful to be here.
So, our Big Time Talker podcast is brought to you by a company called Speaker Match, and they are the world's biggest online virtual speakers bureau. So they line up folks like you who are authors and subject matter experts to go out and speak to groups about their book or whatever they really know. So if someone goes on Speaker Match, a meeting planner, and they see Elizabeth Hendrick there, and you're going to talk about EXODAI, this award-winning book, which, by the way, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What do you tell them it's about?
So EXODAI is a shockingly honest memoir of love, obsession, and torture. And it's basically the story of how I came to terms with my sexuality. And it focuses particularly on a relationship I had with a Japanese dominatrix.
And so that's not what people would probably expect, because you come across in a very sort of conservative way, very, straight and narrow down the middle, and yet things have happened behind the scenes. First of all, that is not a Japanese accent right here. So how did that come to be?
Okay, so I'm British, clearly. I'm from England. My adult life I've been living in London, but I was actually brought up in the east of England, East Anglia, in a place called Norfolk. And that was, when I was very young, that was when I realised that I was a lesbian. I knew from the age of pretty much 10 years old.
Right.
I was chasing girls at school from the age of 6. And, I'm 52 now, so this is going back 20, 30, 40 years. Going back 40 years.
No judgment from me, because I also used to chase girls on the playground, so we have that in common. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, I was just like, I was a real tomboy, and I was, I was very attracted to girls, and but it was a problem. So, interestingly, my classmates, we were all white Caucasians at that time, but interestingly, my classmates didn't have an issue with it until we hit puberty. And when my period started and I was supposed to become a woman, everyone was asking me, well, how do you feel about Alexandra now, who was the girl that I fancied at the time?
Right.
And that was just like having a birthday. You didn't feel any different. I said, no difference, I still adore her. And then they seemed to stand back en masse, as if to say, well, you've got a problem, because a woman loving another woman was an alien, a completely alien concept. And so I wasn't bullied for my sexuality, but I was ostracized, and I got this message, Elizabeth, there's a problem with you, and that internalized into my psyche, and so that manifested in my adult life as me not loving myself as a lesbian, and I didn't really reconcile that till I was about 44 years old. I didn't really fully accept my sexuality until I was 44 years old, and the learning process started when I was in my late 30s, and I'd been on a reality TV show. And I really hit rock bottom. I did so badly on the show. It was for entrepreneurs, and I got kicked off. I spent a couple of months in France in rehabilitation, coming to terms with myself. I read a very good book called The Road Less Traveled by Scott M. Peck.
Yes.
Really great self-help book. And through reading that book, it was as if scales fell off my eyes, and I was able to really see what the problem was with my life. And it was that I didn't accept myself as a lesbian woman. And I was about 36 years old at that time. And then I finally broke away from this denial that there was any problem and started to look at self-healing. And it was a 7-year process that ended with 2 years boot camp with this Japanese dominatrix. And I became fully submissive to her. I became a slave for 2 years, a private slave. And there was a lot of mental torture, a lot of physical torture. The physical torture, which is very graphically described in my book, was very intense, crazy, insane things that we did together. There was electric torture, there was all kinds of rope bondage, all kinds of whipping and everything. And yeah, I don't look like that person, but I was, and it was really an abuse of myself, because I didn't love myself as a lesbian, and I thought that I should be punished. And within the framework of BDSM, I found a way to do that. But the hardest part for me was the mental torture. And that was really where I came out the other side. Because this dominatrix, she stripped me down to absolute zero. I also lost my job. I also wasn't delivering at work. And that led to me losing my job. So
Losing your job,
I wasn't delivering at work, so that's why I lost my job. And I just was at the absolute zero of self-esteem, zero submission, surrender to this woman. And from there, I had the wherewithal to find green shoots of recovery. Once you're stripped of everything, you have to dig down and find it in yourself to recover. And that whole process is described in my book, and I came out the other side, eventually learning to love myself.
So it must be tough, though, to go back and relive all of these things when you wrote the book. Was it tough, or was it, an exercise in catharsis where you get it all out? As you look back on it now, was it the right thing to do to write the book?
So you're absolutely right. Writing the book was incredibly cathartic for me, and it really helped me to process a lot of what happened. I'm still unpacking some of it, even 12 years on. I'm still unpacking some of what happened. So the actual relationship with the dominatrix, which forms half of the book, that ran from 2012 to 2014. And I guess it took me 2 years to recover from the relationship, the hard heartache and pain and emotional trauma. But I started working on this book right back in 2015. I kept diaries of the relationship because it was so crazy, and I just thought I need to document this. And I had written, I kid you not, I had written a million words in this document of this relationship.
Yeah.
I had 4 documents on my computer, 6 volumes, and they all had about 150 to 200,000 words, just mind dumps of what happened each day. And I had to turn this million words into a book that was ideally less than 100,000 words. I mean, a novel these days is first-time novels are usually 80, 90,000 words.
Right.
So there was a lot of work. I started the process in 2015, and I was able to live at some friend's house in the mountains near Mount Fuji. I was living in Japan at the time, and really spent 6 months just thrashing out my first draft of the book, and it was incredibly cathartic and a really helpful part of the healing process.
And now lots of people, though, clearly what you wrote has touched a lot of folks. And I'm going to ask you, and I know I can tell already you're not the type of person that wants to pat yourself on the back, but this thing has won awards. It is reaching people. So a couple of the awards that it has won so far. So
I've won a gold medal for sexuality with the National Indie Excellence Awards.
Okay.
They also gave me a silver medal for LGBTQ plus non-fiction. And I got another award for LGBTQ plus non-fiction from the International Awards. And I got another silver medal award for the best cover design in non-fiction. This beautiful red rose spattered against blood on a shade of grey background. So that's 3 silver medals and 1 gold medal. I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. I never imagined it would be that successful.
So it's connecting. Why?
It's connecting, I think, with people who are struggling with their sexuality in particular, or struggling with their gender, or struggling with their colour. They're in a minority group. I'm getting a lot of great feedback from people in minorities who just find so many things that are relatable. And the crazy things we do as adults to ourselves, if there's this lack of self-love internally somewhere in our psyche, this tremendous self-hatred, what we do to ourselves as adults, and it's incredible. And I mean, for an example, I had a really wonderful comment on one of my YouTube channels from a disabled man who wrote, "I'm a disabled man, I'm a cross-dresser, and I'm really enjoying your amazing book. It's helping me to peel off layers about who I think I am as a person." And for me, I said, well, it was worth all the effort just for that one person that I helped. And I understand I've helped many more people in similar ways. But it's not for the faint-hearted, this book.
Right.
It's very graphic. It's very graphic in the Stephen King sense of the word graphic. It's not a graphic novel with pictures. So I've been very specific when I say what I mean when I say the word graphic. But yeah, it's helping people, but it is very, very raw.
EXODAI is the name of the book. It is with Hendrick. He's our guest today. Where can folks find the book?
So it's available in all the Amazon global markets. It's self-published, so I went down the Amazon KDP route. If you go onto Amazon and type in EXODAI Hendrick, my book should show up. If you just put EXODAI, Amazon's going to think you've misspelled Exodia and show you a bunch of Exodia products. Please don't do that. Please put my surname in with EXODAI, EXODAI Hendrick, and my book should show up. It's in all the Amazon global markets. It's available in ebook or printed paperback. They print on demand. And it's also on Kindle Unlimited. So if you're a member of Kindle Unlimited, you can download it for free.
Are you aware of whether or not the dominatrix has read the book and what sort of feedback?
So she's called Tomo in the book. We're still connected. I mean, a lot of people think we would be enemies, but you know, I'm a very forgiving person, and we're still in touch. I saw her last weekend at a party. She's a bit of a tease. She was still trying to abuse me, but she knows that we've finished. We've separated from that emotional bond that we had, and we're just friends now. But it took a while to get there. But she knows all about the book. She's not read it because it would be, although she understands and speaks English, it would be too challenging for her to read a book like this. For the Japanese, something like this, for people who are very Japanese, because it's not been translated into Japanese, it doesn't really exist in her world.
Okay.
So if I were to get it translated into Japanese, then things would get interesting. But she has actually signed a release letter. So certainly, as it stands, we're all good. We're all good. But I mean, I say some stuff about her that's quite revealing. So, but she's aware of this. She's aware of it. She hasn't actually read it.
You know, there are lots of people all over the world with various sexualities who have been in abusive relationships. And for those of us on the outside, and we look at you and we go, why? Why in the world would you put yourself through that for days, months, weeks, years? And I wonder, as you look back, now that you've got this book out, if there's a core message to those folks, irregardless of their sexuality, about abusive relationships and breaking free.
Yeah, so there's no question that I was in a very toxic relationship, a codependent relationship, and we were pushing each other's buttons. And initially that feels like euphoria at first, but then it turns into trauma at best. I had two voices in my head, and when I was very spiritually uplifted, refreshed from yoga, having a detox diet, whatever, feeling really full of energy and uplifted and spiritually aware, the voice in my head said, stick with the relationship because you're going to save this woman. You're going to save her from her demons. And when I was tired, emotional, drunk, whatever, the voice in my head said, she's taking total advantage of you. You've got to leave her. And I always picked what I thought was the nobler path, which was to stick in the relationship. But I had actually deceived myself. I had deceived myself to think that I was going to save her. And of course, you can't save other people. You can only save yourself. Now, because I took the noble path, I kept putting love and forgiveness into the relationship and constantly pushing myself the extra mile to serve her, to serve her whimsical needs and everything. And eventually, I came out the other side and learned to love myself. So all the love and forgiveness I poured into the relationship towards her kind of came back to me. And eventually, I realized this idea that I would save her was a delusion, that I sold myself to stay enchained into the relationship. And it was a really interesting study of the psychology of the mind. And all of this is explained in the book. But basically, the toxicity of the relationship is a signpost that something is wrong with the relationship, and that means something is wrong with you inside. And that's where you need to focus, and that's where you need to learn to love and forgive yourself.
You say early in your life, far before you ever met this dominatrix, that even as a schoolgirl, and you were attracted to other girls in school, that you had fantasies of torture. As you peel the layers of the onion back, do you now know why that was at such a young age?
So BDSM is multifaceted, and I was into bondage and sexually, and I was then, and I still am now. What I wasn't into was pain. So I'm not a masochist. I don't get turned on by pain, but I would accept it to please the woman because I didn't love myself. And so all of that is finished. I won't ever get into an enslavement relationship with a dominatrix. So that is past, and that was as a result of me not loving myself. I ventured into BDSM because of my interest in bondage, but I got involved in the abusive stuff because of a lack of internal self-love. And now that that is healed, I don't need to be whipped anymore. I don't need to be punished anymore. I don't need to be degraded anymore. I don't need it. I don't want any of that. I love myself, you see. But sure, if somebody wants to strap me up in rubber and tie me up, and great, lovely.
See you this afternoon. Bring it on. Richard Moriarty from The Sun calls your book brave, compelling, remarkable. Chris Riches from the Daily Express says it's brutal, vivid, and electrifying. It must be very gratifying to hear that this book is cutting across and touching so many people in such a positive way.
It is really wonderful. I feel absolutely thrilled that people are enjoying the book so much. It is a hard read though. It comes with trigger warnings. It's got real life BDSM, some very sadistic torture scenes, and they are graphically described in my book. That's part of I think the winning capability of the book is that it is well written, though I don't say so myself, but I've got validation of that from the awards. So it's a very raw, honest account, and I think in all of the reviews that I've received, they all focus on the fact that it's a very telling, honest, raw story, and everybody's saying thank you for sharing it because they're finding it relatable in some way, shape, or form.
This is Elizabeth Hendrick's own story. It's a very honest memoir about torture and obsession and love. It's called EXODAI. It's a multi-award winner. So I'm sharing my studio with a multi-award winner who was brave enough to write her story so that others can learn from it. And I have a feeling as well, based on all these awards, it's quite the page turner. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, Bert. This has been really wonderful.
My pleasure. That's Elizabeth Hendrick. The book is EXODAI, EXODAI. And if you look it up on Amazon, be sure to spell it correctly, EXODAI, D-A-I, and put Elizabeth Hendrick in there so that you go to the right place. Lots of awards for this book, and we thank Elizabeth for joining us today. Thanks also to all the folks here in San Diego at the American Library Association's annual conference and exhibition. We're at the Convention Center in the Podcast Pavilion. Thank you as well to Headline Books and Zoom Into Books for having us today. And most of all, thank you for listening to the Big Time Talker Podcast, sponsored by Speaker Match. Now, wherever you go, whatever you do, make it a great day. Thanks for listening. Bye, everybody.